Welcome to another edition of the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. I'm Don Grodoff. Along with my wife Gina, we have a practice called Focused Healthy Family, helping families get past the behavior and anxiety issues naturally. We also produce the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, where we are advocates for our own family and others dealing with OCD and anxiety. In the Invisible Wheelchair Podcast, we do interviews, provide resources, and information for treatment and support of OCD recovery. We also want to hear from you, your comments, and if you want to tell your story, we want to put it up on the podcast, on our Stories from the OCD side. Our goal in these podcasts is to raise awareness of and advocate for the recovery from obsessive compulsive disorder, better known as OCD. Now, before we get to that podcast, let's hear about our sponsor.
Today I'm here to talk about Q Science's sleep spray. Q Sciences has a number of different sprays. There's a melatonin sleep spray that contains melatonin, 5-HTP, and L-theanine. We've used other melatonin products to help our children with falling asleep. Melatonin is something that occurs naturally in our body that helps us quiet and calm down for sleep. And yet I really feel like I've seen a difference in the spray versus other products. Our youngest is here to talk about it. What things did you like better about the spray versus the other things?
I don't like the chew tablets because they leave like a weird taste, and they're mainly like they also have like you get bits in your teeth.
Okay, so Q Science's spray.
It's a lot better, I'd say. The taste is pretty decent and it works well.
Okay. I'm happy with the quality of these products and how they're helping our whole family. If you'd like to learn more,
simply go to qsciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com. That's the letter Q, sciences.focusedhealthyfamily.com, or visit invisiblewheelchair.com and find out more information there.
There are a lot of supplement products out there, yet you want one that's of good quality. Check out Q Sciences for your family.
Now, let's get to that podcast. This podcast was recorded May 13th, 2022. This is podcast number 68, Parental Burnout and OCD. So today I want to talk about burnout, because this is a place I've been to. I've gone down this journey, and so is my wife, because we are dealing with, if you've listened to the podcast, my podcast, The Invisible Wheelchair, for very long, you can, I think, get the picture of that we have been dealing with OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, for about 12 years now, with 2 kids that suffered with severe OCD. Not just simple OCD, not that I don't know that there is that. And so we've been down the road of burnout. We've been down the road of realizing that if we kept going in the path we were going to crash and burn, basically. And we've learned a lot off of that, and still learning a lot off it, because we're still dealing with it with our second child, and it's getting exhausting. And I read statistics on it that up to 5 million parents suffer with burnout each year. And I think that might even be a smaller number than what truly is, because this was just a general parent burnout. It wasn't parent burnout versus OCD, which I didn't get a chance to really see if there's statistics on that or not. But I find it that it's common for parents to get burnout, and with something like obsessive compulsive disorder, or really any of the disorders that are out there, autism, ADD, ADHD, there's going to be possible burnout if you don't take care of yourself. And some of the factors that you'll see in it that give you a clue to it. And by the way, if you hang with it, I'm going to go through a test for parent burnout at the end of this podcast. So hang on for that. I just want to talk about some of the symptoms or the things that you'll see in burnout. And then we'll talk about how you might be able to come out of it or recover from it. So some of the things that you'll see in it, well, of course, is exhaustion. And that's, like I said, that's something we still, as a family, deal with. I think with all of us, for that matter, we're all at a point of can have exhaustion from just dealing with this over and over and over and over and over and over again. I find too that you see some what might be called emotional distancing from your family, from your kids, from your spouse. You just want to get away from it. You just want to be away from it. And with that comes kind of a guilt thing too, I believe. Now, in the stuff that I've read or researched on it, they put a lot more towards the mother, the mom or the woman in this than they do the man. And I understand that. That's probably true because I would think, and I didn't look at the majority here, but I would think the majority of times it's the mother that takes on the responsibility and the burden of dealing with this because maybe the father works or a lot of times I see males have a little harder time dealing with these things, so they tend to back away from it and let it take the responsibility put on mom. So, but there's a guilt to it because there's a part I know in myself, there's a part of me that realizes or recognizes how exhausted I am and how that I might be pulling away from my spouse or from the kids or from family or friends especially. I've really pulled away from any friends right now. And I feel guilty. I feel like I should be, the should start coming out. I should be, being closer to them. This is the time when they really need me. And so there is some guilt that comes in there. And then with the guilt, so it's kind of a chain, you start feeling exhausted and then you start emotionally kind of separating yourself from everybody, really. And then the guilt comes in that you shouldn't be doing this. You should be able to handle this. You should be closer to kids when they really need you now. And so that guilt comes in. And then that on top of it, and this is something I see and I read about too, that you start to question, oh my God, I'm a terrible parent because of being separated from him, not being there for him, and a lot of times the exhaustion flares up tempers, makes a person a little bit more edgy, a little bit more short-tempered, and so so it just kind of all of these things build on themselves. The guilt of not being a good parent, and then you get mad at yourself, and through having being mad at yourself, you become an angry person. Which I just did a podcast. I think it was the last one I did, number 67, I believe, that I did about the anger that I feel and how inappropriate it feels and how guilt-ridden it feels. But can you see how that builds to that? So, and with that, then you also become kind of emotionally depleted, where it just drains you of emotions and you start almost not caring about things, especially yourself. So those are some of the signs. I mean, it's the fatigue and the lack of caring are just parts of it that play into it. So how do you come out of this? And we're still working on this, so this is not something that I have gotten completely solved. I think that I handle it better because I recognize when it's happening. And my wife has been pretty good about this too. She recognizes when her depression is kicking in. And I don't know that I could say that I have depression as a pure part of me. I think I go through some depression. I don't think that would be a person I would consider myself as a person that has depression a problem, I guess. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So how do you recover from this? How do you get yourself out of this? And so a couple of the ways I know of. First off, it's helpful to understand who you are, to become really aware. I talk about this in my practice when I'm working with people in the tapping work that I do in the coaching that I do with people, as I talk about being aware of where you're at and accepting where you're at makes a huge difference, because once you accept something, the more you fight something off, the more you really hold it to you. You end up having your focus on it, so it just draws you closer to it. So being aware of yourself, and what that means is, one, tuning into yourself. What are you saying to yourself? What are the thoughts that are going through your head? And getting them out, putting them out there, accepting them, and slowly changing your thoughts is important. But what I also thought about is, it's important to know your history, your heritage, I guess. What were your parents like? What did they instill upon you? Did they deal with depression? Did they have anger issues? Did they have problems? Knowing that will help you then to define what's going on and to catch it. Excuse me. To be able to catch it so that you can, one, accept it, and two, to be able to change the perspective around it. And then knowing also, your environment, your community, and what you might be taking off of them, how you might handle things based on the norms of society, how you've taken that in. Knowing that, understanding that, accepting it so that you can change it, to me, I think is important. Is there something about I know I'm German, so I can be stoic, I can be stubborn, I can have trouble dealing with feelings sometimes. I mean, I believe I've worked through a lot of that and better at that stuff, but that's kind of that's my family. It's German stoicness, and that can play against you. Another way I look at recovery is, one is, stop comparing yourself to other parents. You are not them. They are not you. Their culture and history is different. And their parenting style probably is different. And it may not be the parenting style that you have. So stop comparing. I talk about this in my practice all the time with people. Not only parents, but we tend to compare ourselves to others. Oh, look at what they're doing. They're making money. Why can't I? I should be able to do that. Oh, I'm not doing that. Oh, we can only compare ourselves to our past selves. How we were or how we've been, and have we changed from that? Another way to recover is possibly journaling, keeping some kind of record of it. Make yourself do a podcast like I'm doing, even if you don't put it out. Record it, get it out, say it, write it down. It can really help you in getting it out there so that you can possibly accept it and possibly change it. So another way, of course, I'm going to put in a shameless plug here, doing the EFT. I can help you in this, but find something like meditation. Look into how you can delve into mindfulness. I have a website called Arm Length Awareness, which is the path to mindfulness. And it's a 7-part series that takes you through how to become more mindful, how to become aware. And aware is the first step in mindfulness. And it'll help you get there. But whatever you do, find meditation, go to a yoga class, do something for yourself, which of course leads me to, being compassionate for yourself. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Build a community of friends. Find at least one friend that you can confide in and talk to, and be very vulnerable and open to them once you get to know them. Find somebody that's willing to be able to let you listen to them, and you listen, that they listen to you and you listen to them. But build a community that you can fall into, that you can be into, that you can enjoy and be around. Of course, this goes without saying, but get some rest. Make sure to try to get sleep. And I know this place so well, because when we first, with my first daughter, when we had to, what we were dealing with was so horrific that getting sleep was even impossible. There were nights where we would battle into the morning, into 2 and 3 in the morning, and then try to get maybe 3 hours of sleep before she would awake again and start it all over. We went through too much of that. And that's where we got to a point, especially with the first child, that my wife and I realized there was things we had to do to take care of ourselves. The same idea in this, with the meditation is find a quiet place, even if it's the bathroom, where you can lock the door and sit in peace and take 5 minutes. Even if it's just 2 minutes, take time for yourself to breathe, to walk away from it and breathe. And that too was a very hard place for us initially, because my daughter would follow us to the bathroom and bang on the door and yell at us through the door. So it was very hard to find quiet space for us, but we had to do it. We had to find ways, and we did. Like I said, the bathroom was one, outside was another, because rarely she would not follow us outside to yell and scream, because she would be too embarrassed to do that in front of neighbors. And then, of course, like I talked about with like your heritage, with what's going on for you, tuning into yourself, it's also important to accept what's going on, even if it's not the thing that you yelled at your kids. Accept it so you can change it. It's not that you agree with it, not that you like it, whatever it is, but accept it first so that you can begin to change it. And that's what I work with patients with clients with, in changing that perspective around that thing so it isn't the burden as it was before. Another one is to exercise, even if it's just going up and down the steps 10 times a day. Get some kind of exercise, because the fatigue of depression is different than the fatigue when you've exercised and been busy and worked yourself to tire yourself to go to bed. Fatigue from emotional fatigue, from just exhaustion, doesn't necessarily help your sleep. But exercise and being active and things like that does really help your sleep factor. Another one is, don't take this stuff personally. With OCD, especially what we went through with our kids, OCD was very horrific and abusive, and yelling and screaming and battles and all that kind of stuff. And the things that my daughters will say to me, or would say to me, was not always complimentary. You're not my father, or they would cuss at me or whatever. And I would take it in and just sink it in and make myself a terrible dad, or get myself angry. And I had to learn to not take it personally, because it wasn't, to me, it wasn't the child saying it, it was OCD saying it. So don't take it personally if you can really work on that. And it's not easy to do. I talk about having self-care and self-compassion. We tend to be from what I've seen of my clients, we tend to be compassionate to everybody else but ourselves. And I think that's extremely important. Excuse me. Oh my. Wow. It's early morning. It's Friday morning, the 13th of May. Friday the 13th. There's stories right there about Friday the 13th, but I don't believe in all that any longer. But so take care of yourself. It's very important to take time for yourself, find ways, ask for help so that you can take care of yourself. If you have a spouse, you have a partner, have a friend, can they come in and handle what's going on for a few minutes while you take a break in the quieter moments or whatever? And I guess the final thought is take a load off of yourself too. You know, when you're dealing with OCD, when you're dealing with anxiety in a child or even in yourself, you're going to have to give yourself a break and not set yourself up for more things to add to your day than you can handle. Because handling OCD and handling those battles and the stuff that like we had to go through, it takes time and it takes a good portion of the day. We're still going through some of that. So I know for myself, I can't put as much on my calendar and I have to be flexible to be able to move it to another time or another day because sometimes I get exhausted from the battles that I have to deal with, dealing with my kids, that my mind is so zapped out that I have to break away and say, I'm not going to be able to do the work I wanted to do or the chores that I wanted to do or whatever. So at the beginning of the day, if you can, try to prioritize what has to be done. Absolutely has to be. And try to get those done and let the others be flexible in what you can do with it. If you can get it done that day, great. But I think too many people, and I know this from myself too, in the past, I had a list 10 miles long, it felt like, of things to do that day. And there was no way, shape, or form that I was going to get them all done. And I mean, they were like a legal sheet long worth of stuff. I had to learn that I had to narrow it down to maybe 3 to 5 things I could do in a day's time, especially as I got older, and especially in the fact that I was dealing with the battles of OCD and the challenges it sometimes took hours of my time. So those are some of the things that help to recover from it. Just taking care of yourself, exercising, giving space for yourself to be able to do. So now what I want to do, because I don't want to go too long over time here, I was going to go over this parental burnout evaluation, self-evaluation. It's just I think there's like 10 questions. 10 questions. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to go to this article, and it has the quiz right there, and it tells you how to score it and all that. And I'll tell you that too, but you can take the test now while you're talking and stop the recording. But these are the 10 questions, and the answers, the choices of answers, the multiple choice, are not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, and very much so. So to each of these, you rate this. So number 1, the first question is, I get or feel easily irritated with my children. So again, it's rating it not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, and very much so. And each one of these answers has a point value, which I'll talk about at the end. The second question, I feel I am not the good parent I used to be with my children. Again, not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 3, I wake up exhausted at the thought of another day with my children. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 4, I find joy in parenting with my children. Again, not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 5, I have guilt about being a working parent, which affects how I parent. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 6, I feel like I am in survival mode as a parent. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 7, parenting my child is stressful. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 8, I lose my temper easily with my children. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. Number 9, I feel overwhelmed trying to balance my job and parenting responsibilities. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. I'm doing a good job being a parent. Not at all, a little, somewhat, moderately so, very much so. All right. Now, for all the questions except 4 and 10, just those two, number 4 and number 10, use these point values. Not at all gets you 0 points. A little gets you 1 point. Somewhat gets you 2 points. Moderately so gets you 3 points. Very much so gets you 4 points. Now, for questions number 4 and number 10, use reversed scoring. So, in other words, not at all is 4 points, a little is 3 points, somewhat is 2 points, moderately so 1 point, very much so 0 points. So now what you do is you add up all your points together for your final score, what your score means. So from 0 to 10 points, no or few signs of burnout. 11 to 20 points, mild burnout. 21 to 30 points, moderate burnout. And 31 plus points, severe burnout. So where do you stand in that process? I know for myself, I came out as moderate burnout. I think if you would have got me a year or two ago, I would have probably said severe. So I think we've come a ways with this. So again, I will post in the description, I'm going to post a link to that particular article so you can read where I got some of this information. I didn't get all of it from this information. It came from today.com, actually. It was something they did on a show. And there's a video there and everything of them talking about burnout. They're talking in particular about burnout, just parental burnout in general. Whereas what I was trying to do here is talk a little bit about how OCD or high anxiety disorders could play into that. I hope this has helped you in some way, and that if you're experiencing burnout, like I said, what I do, and I do it online, I do it by Zoom and I do it in person, so if you're not living in the Charlotte area, I can help you just as much. I've had clients all over the world, actually. I had in France, I've had them in Canada, so I've had quite a few, and they're all over the States. So anyway, again, another little shameless plug there, but if I can help you with this, because burnout can really be overwhelming and take over your life and send you into depression, and I don't like to see that for anybody. So if I can help you, Go to focushealthyfamily.com and I'll be happy to, you can even see my stuff about EFT there, and I'll be happy to help you. My wife and I can work with you, etc. So I hope things are going well for you, better for you, however you want to say it, and you take care. This concludes this podcast. We hope you will subscribe if you haven't already. Remember, we would love your comments, or if you have a story to tell, we want to put it up on the podcast. Simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com to do that. Don't forget to like us on Facebook at Invisible Wheelchair Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest, we love guests. So simply go to invisiblewheelchair.com and contact us from there. Gina and I are here to help you or your family get to a better place naturally. Simply visit focusedhealthyfamily.com for more information. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Keep tapping and focusing forward for a better way.